The fever broke at 3 in the morning, and that's when I heard my wife planning to destroy me. I'm Alex Hanley, 38 years old, and I've been fighting an autoimmune disease that likes to throw surprise parties in my bones. The kind of parties where the music is excruciating pain and the guest of honor wants to die. My wife Kelsey thinks I'm being dramatic. She's told me so approximately 400 times in the past 2 years. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "You're being dramatic again, Alex," she'd said earlier that evening, standing in our bedroom doorway like a disappointed parent. "It's just a flare-up. Take some ibuprofen and stop acting like you're dying." I was lying in bed, sweating through my third set of sheets, my left leg feeling like someone was drilling holes in the femur. The bone infection that comes with my condition had decided to make a comeback tour, and I was the unwilling venue. "The doctor said I need to rest when it gets this bad," I managed to say through gritted teeth. "The doctor doesn't have to live with you," Kelsey shot back. "I swear, sometimes I think you fake this stuff just to get out of responsibilities." That was vintage Kelsey. Beautiful, successful HR manager Kelsey, who could smile at a company picnic while mentally calculating how to fire half the attendees. We'd been married 6 years, and somewhere along the way, her patience for my illness had evaporated like water on hot asphalt. I used to teach high school English before the flare-ups got too unpredictable. Now I freelance as a copywriter, working from home when my body allows it. Kelsey never misses a chance to remind me how this arrangement cramps her style. "Bram's wife doesn't have to deal with this kind of thing," she muttered, thinking I couldn't hear her. Brandon Foster. Bram to his friends, of which my wife had apparently become one. He owned the trendy gym downtown, drove a custom Mustang, and had the kind of confidence that came from never having his body betray him. Kelsey had joined his gym 6 months ago, ostensibly for the yoga classes. The yoga classes that happened to coincide with his personal training sessions. I'd noticed things. The way she spent extra time getting ready for the gym, how she'd started using phrases like "Bram says" and "according to Bram" in casual conversation, the new workout clothes that cost more than my monthly medication budget. But I'm a chronic illness veteran, and we learn to pick our battles carefully. Energy is a finite resource when your immune system thinks your own bones are enemy combatants. So I kept quiet. I observed. I made mental notes with the same attention to detail that used to help me catch plagiarism in student essays. The fever had spiked around midnight. By 2 a.m., I was delirious, fumbling for my phone to call Dr. Suri's emergency line. My hands were shaking so badly I accidentally hit the voice recorder app instead of the phone dialer. That's when Kelsey's phone rang in the living room. "Hey, sexy," I heard her answer. Even through the fog of fever, that tone was unmistakable. She'd never answered my calls that way, not even when we were dating. I should have turned off the recording, should have minded my own business, should have focused on my own medical emergency instead of eavesdropping on my wife. Instead, I lay there in the dark, my phone recording everything, as my marriage officially ended. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow," Kelsey was saying. "Alex is having another one of his episodes, so he'll be useless for at least 2 days. Bram's voice was muffled, but I caught enough to understand he was asking about me. "Oh, he's fine," Kelsey laughed. "He just likes to milk it for sympathy. You should see him right now, sweating and moaning like he's actually dying. It's pathetic." The recording kept running as they made plans for a weekend getaway, as my wife described in vivid detail how much she preferred Bram's energy to my constant complaining, as she mocked the medication routine that kept me functional, the dietary restrictions that kept me healthy, the careful scheduling that kept my life manageable. "He can't even keep it up anymore," she told her lover. "All those medications mess with everything. Thank God you're nothing like him." I listened to 23 minutes of my wife eviscerating our marriage, our intimacy, and my dignity. 23 minutes of her laughing about my pain while planning her escape into another man's arms. When the call ended, I finally managed to stop the recording. My hands had stopped shaking, though not from the fever breaking. The next morning, Kelsey brought me toast and orange juice like nothing had happened. "Feeling better?" she asked with the practiced concern of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Much better," I said, watching her face carefully. "Thanks for taking care of me." She smiled the same smile she used in HR meetings when she was about to deliver bad news. "That's what wives are for, right?" Wrong, I thought, but kept my mouth shut. I had planning to do. Kelsey's social circle was a carefully curated collection of suburban warriors, each one armed with the latest gossip and the sharpest passive-aggressive comments money could buy. They met every Thursday at Zoe Martinez's house, ostensibly for book club, but really to dissect everyone they knew with surgical precision. I'd been their favorite patient for months. 3 days after the recording, I felt strong enough to venture downstairs during one of their gatherings. The medication had kicked in, the fever was gone, and I could walk without looking like an extra from a zombie movie. "Oh, look, the invalid has risen," announced Zoe as I appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was Kelsey's oldest friend, the kind of woman who collected secrets like some people collected vintage wine. "Feeling human again, Alex?" "Getting there," I said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "Don't mind me, just passing through." But I wasn't just passing through. I was gathering intelligence. Aaron Walsh, Kelsey's work friend, was holding court at the kitchen island. "I swear, my husband would never survive what Alex goes through," she said with the kind of fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Some men just aren't built for adversity." "It's so hard on Kelsey," added Bra Thompson, the quietest member of their group. She was also the only one who occasionally looked uncomfortable when the conversation turned cruel. "She's basically a single parent, dealing with his health issues all the time. Single parent. We didn't have kids?" "She's a saint," Zoe declared. "I don't know how she does it. If my husband was sick that much, I'd lose my mind." "Maybe she should consider her options," Aaron suggested with a meaningful look. "Life's too short to be tied down to someone who can't pull their weight." I almost laughed out loud. These women had no idea they were giving me a master class in my wife's true feelings. Every sympathetic nod, every understanding murmur, every suggestion that Kelsey deserved better, it was all being filed away for future reference. "Alex seems like such a burden," Zoe continued, apparently forgetting I was standing 10 feet away. "Always sick, never working a real job anymore. What kind of man can't even support his wife properly?" "The kind who's standing right here," I said pleasantly. The kitchen went dead silent. 4 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me, and I could practically see the mental calculations happening. How much had I heard? How long had I been listening? Should they backtrack or double down? Kelsey chose to double down. "We're just concerned about you, honey," she said with that same HR smile. "Your health issues affect everyone who cares about you." "How thoughtful," I replied. "And here I thought you were just gossiping about my medical condition like it was the latest reality TV show." Aaron had the grace to look embarrassed, but Zoe was made of sterner stuff. "We're your friends, Alex. Sometimes friends need to have difficult conversations." "Friends," I repeated, tasting the word like it was something bitter. "Is that what we're calling this?" Bree shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Maybe we should talk about the book instead," she suggested weakly. "What book?" I asked. "Because I'm pretty sure you haven't discussed literature in here for months. This is more like a support group for people who enjoy other people's misery." "That's enough," Kelsey said sharply. "You're being paranoid." Paranoid. That was rich, coming from someone who'd spent 23 minutes the other night detailing my inadequacies to her boyfriend. "You're right," I said. "I'm sure I'm imagining things, just like I'm imagining how much happier you all seem when you're talking about my failures." I left them sitting there, marinated in their own awkwardness, and went back upstairs to my office. I had work to do, and not the copywriting kind. That evening, after the book club had disbanded and Kelsey was in the shower, I did some research on each of her friends. Social media made it embarrassingly easy. Zoe was having marriage problems she hadn't shared with the group. Erin was struggling with her teenage daughter's rebellion. Even Bree had secrets, financial troubles her husband didn't know about. Everyone had vulnerabilities. Everyone had pressure points. I was starting to understand that this war wouldn't be won with direct confrontation. It would be won with information, patience, and the kind of strategic thinking that came from years of managing classroom dynamics and teenage drama. Kelsey thought she was dealing with the same passive, sick husband she'd been manipulating for months. She had no idea she was actually dealing with someone who'd spent 15 years learning how to handle people who underestimated him. The next Thursday, I made sure to be downstairs when the book club arrived. I joined Bram's gym on a Tuesday morning when my energy was good and my rage was better. The membership fee was outrageous, but I considered it an investment in my future happiness. Bram was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", perpetually tanned, with the kind of smile that probably worked on everyone except chronically ill English teachers with nothing left to lose. "Alex, right?" he said, extending a hand that could have crushed walnuts. "Kelsey's mentioned you. Great to finally meet you, man." "I'm sure she has," I replied, matching his grip as firmly as my medication-weakened hands allowed. "All good things, I hope." His laugh was just a little too loud, a little too long. "Of course, man. She's proud of how you handle your situation." My situation. Like chronic illness was a personality quirk instead of a medical condition. "She's very supportive," I said, always encouraging me to get out more, try new things. In fact, she specifically recommended your personal training sessions. Something flickered across his face. Guilt? Panic? It was gone too quickly, to be sure. That's great, but I'm pretty booked up right now, he said. Maybe one of my other trainers could help you out. Oh, I wouldn't want to work with anyone else, I insisted. Kelsey speaks so highly of your technique. The double meaning wasn't subtle, and we both knew it. Bram's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his professional smile. Tell you what, he said. Why don't you try a few group classes first? Get a feel for the place. I spent the next hour in a beginner's yoga class, surrounded by soccer moms and retirees, watching Bram through the glass partition as he trained his private clients. He kept glancing my way, and each time our eyes met, I gave him a friendly wave. After the class, I lingered near the juice bar, nursing a protein smoothie that tasted like chalk and false hope. That's when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. Is that Kelsey's husband? Asked a woman I didn't recognize. Yeah, that's Alex, replied someone else. Poor guy has no idea what's going on. It's so obvious, though. I mean, she's here every day, always hanging around after her sessions with Bram. And did you see them at the parking lot last week? They weren't exactly discussing workout routines. I turned slightly, pretending to read the nutrition information on my smoothie bottle while I listened to these strangers dissect my marriage. I feel bad for him, the first woman continued. He seems nice enough, and he's obviously dealing with health issues. Kelsey doesn't seem too bothered by it, her friend observed. I heard her telling Bram that she deserves better than being tied down to someone who's sick all the time. The smoothie bottle cracked in my grip. That afternoon, I returned to the gym during peak hours. Bram was in the middle of a training session with a client, demonstrating proper form on the bench press. The gym was crowded, filled with the usual mix of serious athletes and casual fitness enthusiasts. I walked up to him in the middle of his demonstration. Bram, I called out loudly enough for nearby gym members to hear. I wanted to thank you for all the personal attention you've been giving my wife. He looked up, startled. Alex, hey, I'm with a client right now. Oh, don't let me interrupt, I said cheerfully. I just wanted to let everyone know how dedicated you are. Staying after hours, weekend sessions, even taking personal calls from clients at midnight. That's real commitment to customer service. The gym had gotten noticeably quieter. People were starting to stare. I think there might be some misunderstanding, Bram said carefully, his client looking between us with growing confusion. No misunderstanding at all, I replied. Kelsey tells me everything. How you've helped her work on her flexibility, her endurance, her ability to handle intense, prolonged sessions. His face was turning red. Alex, maybe we should discuss this privately. Why? I asked innocently. I'm just praising your professional skills. Although I have to ask, is it normal for trainers to give their clients detailed feedback about their husband's performance issues? That did it. Bram stood up abruptly, knocking over his water bottle. It hit the floor and exploded, soaking his expensive phone that had been sitting nearby. Shit, he muttered, diving for the phone. Oh no, I said, stepping forward as if to help. My foot accidentally kicked the water bottle, sending it skittering across the floor where it tripped a woman carrying a full weight plate. The plate hit the ground with a crash that echoed through the suddenly silent gym. Everyone was staring now, and Bram was on his knees trying to save his waterlogged phone while his client looked on in bewilderment. I'm so sorry, I announced to the room. I was just trying to express my gratitude to Bram for all the extra attention he's been giving my wife. But I guess some people get uncomfortable when their professionalism is recognized publicly. I left him there, soaked and humiliated, surrounded by curious onlookers and a client who was probably wondering what the hell he was paying for. That evening, Kelsey came home from the gym earlier than usual. What did you do? She demanded the moment she walked through the door. I joined your gym, I said calmly. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to be more active? You know exactly what I mean. Bram said you made a scene. Did he? That's interesting. What kind of scene? She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger, which in a way she was. I don't know what you think you know, she said finally. I know enough, I replied. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The recording was my nuclear option, but I wasn't ready to deploy it yet. First, I wanted to watch Kelsey's world crumble piece by piece, the way mine had been crumbling for months. It started with the book club. I'd done my homework on Kelsey's friends, and I'd learned that their group chat was their lifeline. Every piece of gossip, every social plan, every cruel observation about their absent friends, it all flowed through that digital pipeline. Getting access was easier than it should have been. Kelsey left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered, and she'd never changed her passcode from our anniversary date. Sentimental, even for a cheating wife. I didn't need to steal anything, I just needed to plant seeds. The first seed was a screenshot of a text conversation between Zoe and her marriage counselor, discussing her husband's gambling problem. I'd found it on her public Instagram story, hidden in the background of what was supposed to be a cute coffee shop photo. People were amazingly careless with their private information. I sent it to the group chat from Kelsey's phone with a message, "Girls, we need to talk about Zoe's situation. This is getting serious." Then I deleted the message from Kelsey's phone and waited. The explosion was immediate and spectacular. Zoe called Kelsey screaming. How dare she share private information? How long had she been planning to betray her trust? What kind of friend screenshots someone's therapy communications? Kelsey, of course, had no idea what Zoe was talking about. She denied everything, which only made Zoe angrier. If Kelsey was going to lie about it, then clearly their friendship was over. 2 days later, I planted the second seed. This time, it was information about Aaron's daughter's arrest for shoplifting. Information that was public record, but that Aaron had asked the group to keep quiet about. Again, the message appeared to come from Kelsey's phone. Again, I deleted it immediately. Again, the fallout was swift and brutal. By the end of the week, Kelsey's carefully constructed social circle was in ruins. Zoe wasn't speaking to her. Aaron had blocked her number. Even Bree was keeping her distance, unsure who to believe, but unwilling to risk becoming the next target. "I don't understand what's happening," Kelsey told me over dinner. "My friends have all gone crazy. They're accusing me of things I never did." "That's terrible," I said, cutting my chicken with surgical precision. "What kind of things?" "Sharing private information, betraying confidences." "But I would never do that. You know I wouldn't." I looked up at her, this woman who'd been sharing my private medical information with her lover for months, and nodded sympathetically. "Of course you wouldn't," I said. "You're the most trustworthy person I know." The irony was lost on her, but I savored it like fine wine. With her social support system in chaos, Kelsey started leaning more heavily on Bram. Their phone calls became more frequent, their text exchanges more desperate. She needed someone to validate her, to tell her she wasn't going crazy, to assure her that her friends were just being unreasonable. Bram was happy to oblige. He was also sloppy about it. I started documenting everything, screenshots of their text conversations when Kelsey left her phone unattended, photos of Bram's car in our driveway during hours when I was supposed to be sleeping off a flare-up, voice recordings of their phone calls captured through the baby monitor app I'd installed on Kelsey's phone. The baby monitor app was a stroke of genius, if I do say so myself. Marketed as a way for parents to keep tabs on their children, it could be installed remotely on any phone with the right access. Kelsey thought it was a software update. Every conversation, every plan, every cruel joke about my condition, it was all being recorded and stored in the cloud. But the real breakthrough came when I overheard them planning something that went far beyond a simple affair. "We need to be patient," Bram was saying during one of their late-night calls. "If we push too hard too fast, he might get suspicious." "I'm tired of being patient," Kelsey replied. "I want out of this marriage, but I'm not walking away empty-handed. The inheritance thing won't work if he's mentally competent. We need documentation that he's unstable." "Inheritance?" "My father had left me a substantial life insurance policy and a trust fund that would mature when I turned 40. Money that Kelsey would only have access to if she was my wife and I was declared mentally incompetent. They weren't just planning to humiliate me, they were planning to have me committed." "His medical records already show depression and anxiety," Kelsey was saying. "Dr. Suri has him on antidepressants along with everything else. If we can show a pattern of erratic behavior, paranoid delusions about our relationship." "The gym thing was perfect," Bram agreed. "Made him look completely unhinged. We just need a few more incidents like that." I sat in my dark office listening to my wife and her lover plot to steal my inheritance by having me declared mentally ill, and I realized that I'd been thinking too small. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Attorney Michael Chen had been handling my family's legal affairs since my father's death 3 years ago. He was thorough, discreet, and expensive enough to guarantee his complete attention. "Alex," he said, settling behind his mahogany desk, "what can I do for you?" I placed my phone on his desk and pressed play. For the next 20 minutes, Mike listened to my wife and her lover discussing their plan to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could access my inheritance. His expression grew darker with each revelation. "Jesus Christ," he muttered when the recording ended. "How long has this been going on?" "The affair? At least 6 months. The inheritance scheme, I just found out about it last week." Mike leaned back in his chair, processing what he'd heard. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud, at minimum. Possibly attempted conservatorship abuse. Do you have more evidence? I showed him everything. The recordings, the screenshots, the photographs, months of documentation that painted a clear picture of adultery, emotional abuse, and financial conspiracy. This is comprehensive, Mike said approvingly. But what do you want to do with it? We could have them both arrested. No, I said. I don't want them in jail. I want them destroyed. Mike raised an eyebrow. Destroyed how? Socially, professionally, personally. I want everyone they know to see exactly who they really are. That's more complicated than criminal charges, but more satisfying, I replied. Can you help me or not? Mike was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence spread across his desk. What you're talking about isn't technically illegal, he said finally, but it's nuclear. Once you detonate this information, there's no taking it back. Good, I said. I don't want to take it back. The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than confronting Kelsey and Bram directly, we would let them continue with their scheme while documenting everything. When they finally made their move to have me committed, we would spring the trap. They'll need to file paperwork, Mike explained. Psychiatric evaluations, competency hearings, financial assessments. The moment they start that process, they'll be committing fraud with documented evidence of their real motives. And then? Then we release everything. The recordings, the evidence of their affair, proof of their conspiracy. We send it to everyone they know. Friends, family, employers, professional associations. We make sure their reputations are destroyed before they even realize what's happening. It was a beautiful plan. All I had to do was play the part of the increasingly unstable husband while secretly documenting their every move. The performance began immediately. I started having episodes in public places. Nothing too dramatic, just moments of apparent confusion or paranoia that Kelsey could point to later as evidence of my declining mental state. At the grocery store, I loudly asked a clerk why everyone was staring at me. At the bank, I demanded to know if someone had been asking about my accounts. At Kelsey's office Christmas party, I cornered her boss and rambled about feeling like people were talking about me behind my back. Each incident was carefully calibrated to seem genuinely disturbing while actually being completely reasonable given what I knew about Kelsey and Bram's conspiracy. You're scaring me, Kelsey told me after the Christmas party incident. This paranoia isn't normal. I'm not paranoid, I replied, right on script. I know people are talking about me. I can see it in their faces. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Suri about adjusting your medication. There's nothing wrong with my medication. There's something wrong with everyone else. Perfect. She was eating it up, probably already planning how to present this conversation to whatever psychiatrist she'd convinced to evaluate me. But the real performance was yet to come. 2 weeks later, Kelsey announced that she'd arranged for me to see a specialist. Dr. Patricia Williams, she said, showing me a business card. She specializes in patients with chronic illnesses who are experiencing psychological complications. I researched Dr. Williams that night. She was legitimate, but she'd also been sanctioned twice by the state medical board for questionable competency evaluations. Exactly the kind of doctor who might be willing to rubber stamp a diagnosis in exchange for the right financial incentive. I don't need a psychiatrist, I told Kelsey. I need people to stop conspiring against me. Nobody's conspiring against you, Alex. You're sick. I'm not sick. You're lying. The argument escalated from there, with Kelsey playing the concerned wife and me playing the increasingly agitated husband. By the end of it, she was in tears, and I was shouting about betrayal and conspiracy. It was all theater, but it was convincing theater. The appointment with Dr. Williams was scheduled for the following week. According to my research, she typically required 2 sessions before making a competency recommendation. If Kelsey and Bram were going to make their move, it would be soon. I was ready for them. The block party was Kelsey's idea, a neighborhood barbecue to help Alex reconnect with the community and show everyone that despite his recent episodes, he was still a valued member of their suburban family. What she really wanted was an audience for my final public breakdown. I knew this because I'd heard her planning it with Bram during one of their increasingly desperate phone calls. If he has another paranoid episode in front of the whole neighborhood, it'll be perfect documentation for Dr. Williams, she'd said. We can have him committed by the end of the week. Are you sure he'll cooperate? Bram had asked. He's been getting worse, more suspicious, more agitated. It won't take much to push him over the edge. They were right about me being on edge, just not for the reasons they thought. The party was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. By Friday night, I had everything in place. Mike had prepared a comprehensive dossier of evidence. The original recordings, screenshots of text conversations, photographs, financial records showing Bram's recent cash flow problems, and documentation of Dr. Williams's questionable professional history. Copies were ready to be distributed to every person who would be at the party, plus Kelsey's employer, Bram's business partners, and both of their extended families. I'd also prepared a special surprise for the event itself. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. The entire neighborhood turned out, along with Kelsey's remaining friends, several of Bram's gym clients, and a carefully selected group of local business owners who did business with both of them. I played my part perfectly, quiet, slightly withdrawn, occasionally glancing around as if I was worried about something. When people asked how I was feeling, I gave vague answers about stress and medication adjustments. Kelsey was in her element, playing the devoted wife managing her husband's health crisis with grace and dignity. She made sure to mention my recent episodes to several key people, always with the perfect mixture of concern and embarrassment. Bram arrived fashionably late, playing the supportive family friend. He made a point of checking on me, asking about my health, offering to help with anything I needed. The performance was flawless. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush. At exactly 3 p.m., I stood up and called for everyone's attention. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said loudly enough for the entire crowd to hear. Kelsey thought it would be good for me to reconnect with the community, and she was right. There are some things I need to share with all of you. Kelsey's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of her script. "As most of you know, I've been dealing with some health issues lately," I continued, "and apparently some people think those health issues have affected my mental state." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the portable speaker we'd set up for music. "I want you all to hear something," I said. "This is a recording of my wife talking to her boyfriend about how to have me declared mentally incompetent so they can steal my inheritance." The first recording started playing, Kelsey's voice crystal clear, discussing my pathetic condition and her plans for a weekend getaway with Bram. The crowd went dead silent. Kelsey's face went white. Bram started looking around for an exit, but I wasn't finished. "That was just the beginning," I announced. "Here's the conversation where they discuss having me committed." The second recording played, with Kelsey and Bram's voices detailing their conspiracy to use false psychiatric evaluations to gain control of my finances. By now, people were pulling out their phones, recording everything. Kelsey was shaking her head, mouthing "no" over and over again. Bram had gone completely pale. "And here," I said, starting the third recording, "is where my loving wife explains to her boyfriend exactly what she thinks of our marriage vows." This was the most damaging recording, where Kelsey described in graphic detail how much she despised living with me, how my illness disgusted her, and how she couldn't wait to be free of me once they got their hands on my money. When it ended, the silence was deafening. "Alex," Kelsey finally managed to say, "you're having an episode. This isn't real." "Isn't it?" I replied. I gestured to Mike, who stepped forward with a stack of folders. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "my attorney has prepared documentation of everything you've just heard, plus additional evidence of adultery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted financial abuse. Please take a copy. Share it with anyone who might be interested." The crowd surged forward, grabbing folders with the enthusiasm of bargain hunters at a clearance sale. Kelsey tried to run, but she was surrounded by neighbors who were already reading through the evidence. Someone was asking her if it was true about the inheritance. Someone else wanted to know how long the affair had been going on. Bram made it almost to his car before being cornered by 3 of his gym clients who were demanding explanations and refunds. I stood in the middle of it all, watching my carefully planned revenge unfold exactly as I'd envisioned it. "You're weak," Kelsey had told me during one of her recorded conversations with Bram. "Real men don't just lie down and take it." I walked over to where she was standing, surrounded by hostile neighbors and former friends, tears streaming down her face. "You were right about one thing," I told her, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Real men don't just lie down and take it." I looked around at the crowd, at Bram being berated by his clients, at the neighbors who were already pulling out their phones to share the scandal with friends who hadn't made it to the party. "I survived you," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard, "and that took more strength than you'll ever understand." The police arrived 20 minutes later, called by someone who thought the situation might escalate to violence. But there was no violence, just the complete social destruction of 2 people who had underestimated the wrong man. By Monday morning, Kelsey had been fired from her job. The HR department couldn't keep someone who'd been caught planning to defraud her own husband. Bram's gym lost half its membership when the recordings went viral on social media. Dr. Williams was under investigation by the state medical board. Within a week, both Kelsey and Bram had left town, separately. I kept the house, the inheritance, and my dignity. Most importantly, I kept my health, which turned out to be much more manageable when I wasn't living with someone who treated my illness like a personal inconvenience. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Kelsey got nothing except a reputation that followed her to whatever city she'd fled to. As for me, I went back to teaching. Turns out there's nothing quite like surviving a conspiracy against your sanity to give you the confidence to handle a classroom full of teenagers. And I never had another episode again.